Well, welcome to the Dream Labs. Dr. Contrast live here today, and just thought we'd kind of go through a real quick review before we start today's program. And it was interesting yesterday. I think we did a little bit of a research bit on conversation on packaging and wheelbase and so forth. And just for review purposes, I think a couple of questions came up yesterday from the stream itself regarding what makes an SUV an SUV. Well, I think a lot of it's package system, for example. It's a different ground height, stance, seating arrangement, cowl to dash. All those elements change from a typical coupe and sedan. But I think the primary thing is considered in industry as a one-box system, and I think it's one box because everything's contained in one envelope. And so as we did yesterday at Sketch to illustrate that, the one-box system came about over the last few years since the wagon and the SUV became mainstream with Chrysler's introduction and so forth some years ago. But again, I think the two things that we wanted to stress, and I'll pick up on here today and continue on today's stream rather. What we did yesterday was pick up on two very important things. Number one, to get the proportions correct and the packaging correct. Now, in this case, the package is an SUV. And the proportions, I think we spent a little bit of time developing the fact that a good way to develop a vehicle proportion is to get the wheelbase set. That's critical. Too long, too short, it looks stubby, and it's overstretched and limo-like, and it's not quite there. But I think the point we're getting at yesterday was once you plant that first wheel in elevation or perspective, count 3 back, and then that fourth wheel becomes a pretty good rationale for a wheelbase setup, no matter what you're working with, whether it's a one-box system, in this case an SUV, or a coupe or sedan. So let's get started here, and unlike yesterday, I want to really concentrate today more of a traditional look from an SUV. Yesterday we did 2 studies on just line work and so forth. I'll do the same thing again today with a little bit more, in-depth line work. But I think the more traditional look today is much more of a formal upper on what we're going to work with here. So it's not so much of a fastback or a shooting brake approach, but a very traditional SUV packaging, lifting up the body height and letting that become part of the mainstream here. So let's get started here. First of all, let's plant those wheels. Let's get that first circle in place here. Get that started. Go there. Let's take it right back down the ground. Let's get a little bit more depth in this thing here. Not be afraid to go nice and loose. Take that ground line back. And again, elevate 1, 2, 3, and then that fourth wheel back is about right in there. So that's going to plant that second or the rear wheel. There we are. We're going to just get that started. Let's get the ground height here. It's going right through about maybe there. That's good height there. Take that on through. Kick this back. Let's get that belt line started here. A little bit of nose graphics in this thing. Let's bring this into play. Let's take this right through. Develop the upper. Just nice and easy. Let's get the cowl across there. Notice I'm slowly but surely building from the ground on up. And I think that's probably the most important aspect of putting all these programs together. Always kind of work from the ground here. Let's kind of take this through here. And that's some more width in this guy. There it is. It's going to take this in a nice little design feature. Let's take this right into the rearview mirror. Let's drop this back. Let's take it right through. Let that become the belt. There you go. And that's into that. Very cool. Across. Get the width set. Run another line through here. Come back. Break it just a bit. Break that just a bit. And come right back down to that little insert piece. Let's run that line through as a guide. Notice I'm starting to build the form off of that wheel plant when we first started to get that wheelbase set, and come right back to it again here. Let's get the arches in place here, the wheel openings. Let's get this into place here. Run that in very loosely. I'm going to start very lightly here just to build a certain substrate. Then we'll come back in and begin to put a little bit more detail into some of the surface work. Let's get a little bit of let's run that right through just for a second. Let's take that line through, bring it on in. Pardon me as I kick back here. Let's get that far side fender in place. Drop that in, right back in the cowl. Pillar, far side pillar. Now let's complete the upper. Let's take that back just a bit more. There we are. So we're getting much more of a formal, traditional upper in the rear quarter here. Not so much of a fastback look, but it's just getting a lot more streamlined in terms of being the full SUV package here. So let's go back, pick this up here. At the center line, run that in there just as a guide. Let's come back in and pick up some graphics here. By the way, I'm just working on bond paper with a very thin pencil. Let's come back in through here, pick up a little bit of lamp graphics and change a little bit of character here and run it right up on top of the cowl. Quarter area, there we are, nice. Let's take that through. We won't see much of it on the other side because of the roundness of the form itself. Let's take this through, finish that up. Take that form down, and then we're going to pick up that same foot right down to the base here. Take that right through. So there's pretty good setup in terms of getting the sort of the proportions there. Just little by little begin to build this guy. So here we are. Let's come back up. Hey, how you doing there, Ballistic? Thank you for joining us here. Good to see you on board again. Thanks for taking the time to join us. I'm just picking up on what we did yesterday, Ballistic, on a couple of nice maybe variations on the theme for SUV, picking up on that same thing we did yesterday, but today more of a traditional box type upper, less fastback, and much more traditional approach to a SUV, but just going through some line weights. I just got a couple of nice pencil sketches put together here with some line weight in it. Then for future reference, maybe tomorrow we'll come back and do a nice little job of finishing up a nice detail piece on this thing. So let's come back and pick this up just a touch here. Let's just break this in. Let's break that in. Just trying to build some surface here. Get the front end graphic in place. It goes through. Let's get a little bit of weight in this thing. Take that underneath. Lose it. There we are, just little by little getting the front end in place here. So, how have you been, Ballistic? Really good to haven't seen or heard of you for being on the stream for a little bit, but it's nice to have you join us here today, and I hope this is making some sense for you here as we go. Let's take this through. Let's get this design line right through here. Let's do a little different twist here. Let's take that through. Become a little bit of a kick panel. Little design theme on that piece right there. Let's run that right on through. Pick up on the back section here. Put a bit of weight in this rear wheel. Take the shadow off just a bit. Let's run that through. Get that grounded. Let's get that far side tire in place too, just about right there. A little bit of depth to it underneath. So we're trying to build this form here as it gets come together. There we are. Let's get this guy to come through here. Run that strike across here. Let's take this in, just more of a pillar look in this thing. There it is. Let's get this guy. Let's take that right into the header. There it is. Very cool. Now let's take this. Let's become a nice little design theme into the rearview mirror. And there we go. Let that little design form right there, let it blend right into the rearview mirror pocket, and then take it right back as part of the car. So there we are. We're starting to build this shape nicely here, nice and smooth. Little by little, we're just going to slowly build it up off of the form itself. Let's take this back, put a little bit of that kick in it. So it comes down, comes in, rolls over, comes back out again, runs through. Now let's get this guy moving here. Let's put a little bit of a body break in this thing. Let's take that through, run that into it. Run that through. Just let's take this right back into a nice little traditional bumper set here. There it is. There we go. Just a little bit. Let me move that in just a bit more. How's that looking there, guys? Pretty good, proportionally. There we are. Let's get this rear wheel well in. Wheel opening rather. Let's put that in place. Let's put a little bit of lamp graphics in this thing. Let's kind of change pace here. Bring it off just a little bit more of a tail to it. A little bit of an undercut. And again, a bit of a signal lamp off the one side there, just to break up that shape just a bit. There we are. Let's put some weight in this thing. Let's put some heat in this lines now. It's got a pretty good shape going here. Let's kind of put some heat to it. More wheel definition, ground line, back to ground, run through. There's my center line of the wheel there, center line there. I'm going to build that. Let's get that far side tire off here too. Let's get that down and just take it off the page and indicate where that is. Take that through. A little bit of return on that, guys. A little bit more interest. There we are. That's how to build up some pretty nice weights. Let's take this around the bend here. Let's run that. Let's take this through here. Get the backlight in place. There we are. A little bit of the internals. Cut line through here. Cut line window break there. Form and doing it. Back out again. This line comes through, picks up the middle of the door cut. Just very lightly, just bring it all together. There it is. Let me just sharpen the stick a little bit here, gang. Now let's come back in and get this wheel situated. Slowly building a 5-spoke. And we'll come back in here and just pick up some of the depth on this guy. All right, man, move around just a bit here. Get this thing to kind of function in. A little more wine laying here. Get that front end in place here. A bit of section. So we're kind of putting it all together here, gang. It's coming together. Here we are, just picking up the pieces as we go here. Really concentrating on just a good line drawing in preparation for tomorrow's stream. I'm going to go back and pick up one of these detail pieces and begin to put a little bit of illustration together on it and a little bit of tone. So there we are there. It looks pretty good there. Let's kind of define this a little bit more here. A little more shadow in these guys. Turn that just a bit. And again. Right in there. Leave it pretty open. A bit of a disc in the center of that guy. Puts a little bit more definition in that front end system there, the wheels. Let's take that line right through. That's part of that whole package there. There it is. Let's get this in place here. The lamp graphic. A little bit of an offset on it. There it is. A little bit more design character to it. Let's take this in. And let's get this rear wheel set in here. Let's move this over just a bit here. Let's come back and get this tire in place. Again, center line. Get that hub in place here. And enough of that. Bring up that 5-spoke. I'm going to rotate this just a little bit. And we'll put a little more definition in this guy. There it is. There it is. No offset here and there. And again, a little more definition in these guys. There's there. A little bit of that internal hub. There we are. So there we go. Hey, how you doing, Chip? Good to have you on board here. We're just kind of picking up some of the pieces from. Hey, Shadow, how are you? Good to see you. Hope everything's well with you. Thanks for picking up the stream here, guys. I'm looking on the second generation. Second go around today on some of this SUV stuff. Yesterday, we spent a little more time doing more of a fastback approach to an SUV, like almost a semi crossover fastback. Today, much more of a traditional package, and to get the upper a little bit more lift to it, much more a little more stable in terms of packaging and so forth, and the overall one-box system we were working with yesterday. So I'm just going to concentrate on some good line drawing work here today. I'll preface on maybe tomorrow coming in and doing a nice finished stream on this thing and doing a nice little finished rendering. Looking for just design theme here, and just got it started. And we made a little bit of an issue, or talked about at the start of the stream. Just going back and reviewing some of the things we talked about yesterday about this whole idea of the one-box system for setting up an SUV. Hey, how you doing there? Are you feeling all right, Chip? Were you sick or what? Huh. Well, it's good to have you on board, so thanks for joining us here today. Let's go back and pick up some of this stuff. Much more like yesterday, really played up an awful lot of the concept of getting the proportion down for developing this package. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the one box is all under one envelope and so forth. My work day. Yeah, hey, how you doing? Okay, getting better now. Hey, very good. Hey, Shadow, you were sick too. Jeez, that's a shame, man. Anyhow, good to have you guys on board here today, and we're just looking at just picking up a design theme for SUVs, much more traditional, unlike the fastbacks we were doing yesterday. They're much more of it's almost like a shooting brake offset, but this is much more of a traditional package for SUV. Just looking for a theme, gonna get back in there and do some nice work stuff tomorrow. Little bumperette there. There's a pretty good line sight right there in terms of what that second package is gonna look like. Let's put a little bit of tone in this thing. Let's put a little bit of softness inside, just give it a little more depth. Just to tone it just a bit, give it more depth to it. Nice and easy. Nice and consistent. Let's kind of set that ground just a bit. A little bit of that spike to come through, pick up that little bit of a valence. There it is there, and there. So, pretty interesting little line sight there, guys. Just keeping it nice and vaporous. Not a whole lot of you have to work around the iPads, the stuff everywhere now. It's SUV interiors, battery power, made for interesting spaces now. You don't have to work around. Yeah, that's true. Much more of a packaging discipline has taken place here, Shadow. You're absolutely right. So it's gotten a lot of sophistication over the last 3 to 4 years, especially now that they become a big part of the marketplace. Pardon me as I just kind of tune this front end graphic in just a bit here. Upper, there it is. So there we go. That's phase one here. Let's see any questions I've got coming up here. Totally, let's see, okay, better now. Very cool. And today, have me work around the iPads, this stuff. iPads, this stuff around. Let's put a bit of wheel envelope in this thing, a little bit of tone. So we're going to see where that tire rests. Sorry, I turn this upside down just for a second. A little more contrast here in the tire itself. Hey, Chip, hey, thanks very much. Appreciate the subscription there, Doctor. Good deal. Thank you very much. Good to have you on board, as always. Let me turn this around, get this tire straightened out here just a bit. And we'll just tone it in just a touch, give it more impact. Then we'll go with that. Keep it all pretty loose. Hey, Ballistic, thank you, man. That's great. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Super. I'm glad you guys are back on board here. It's fun to have you guys on board, no doubt. Let's put a shadow on any of these spokes here, just give more drama to it. Let's get this in place here. I don't want to go too far. I want to keep this as much as line as we can here. Let's bring up the weights just a bit. Yeah, a little shadow underneath that drop right there, that little tail fin there. Let's bring that into place. And again, oops, pardon me, let's get this guy straightened up here a bit. How are we doing there? Oops, on the screen. There we are. Let me show you. Go kick that pixel. Kick, kick the pixel guy. Now what did he do? Let's come back here just for a second. Get this a little more detail on this guy. Come back and get a little more depth in this wheel well. Deepen it up just a bit. Correct some of the circle here loosely, freehand. Get that in place and put a little bit of shade in this guy. Just gonna get a little bit more depth so it kind of sets it. Same thing up front. And get a little bit of that backside wheel. Just kind of slowly but surely kind of tint that in. And again, just a touch of this guy up front. And let it disappear. And we'll kind of let it go with that. What do you think, gang? Is it really all right? Making sense? There it is. Thank you, Shadow. Just a wonderful person, unlike Pixel. Yay! The Pixel Man. Where is he, by the way? emoji. Yeah, pretty awesome. Thank you very much, gang. What do you think? Is that pretty sufficient for that first go around here? Is that first new look at, for example, putting together a nice little system, much more traditional SUV, getting much more of an upper on this thing, less of a slope on the upper, and much more of a traditional look at this. And let's give a little bit of a backdrop here, a little bit of presence. Let's rotate this again. Let's turn this upside down a little bit. A little bit of a frame to it in case we want to render it in the future reference, a little bit of a backdrop in it, and let it go with that. And last but not least, let me just sharpen the stick for a second here. So there's phase one. Just a nice simple line study on looking at SUVs. A very unusual, peculiar set of circumstances package-wise. It's a very unusual thing to work with because you've got to really pay attention to the wheelbase stance, overall height, the packaging content, and so forth, and how to put together the process. So it looks quick. The front wheel generated some downforce. Yeah, it looks pretty good. It's interesting. So I don't know, someone sent out the police looking. Thank you. Yeah, I'm just wondering what happened to Shadow. I mean, I keep hearing his name coming up on the stream, but I don't see him coming in. So I hope he's all right. And so far so good. There's phase one, guys. Just a nice little pass at it. And again, I'm going to slow it down today in just in terms of getting a little more specific with the idea of getting a much more traditional look at a full box, one box package in an SUV. So there we are. There it is, front to back. And we got that set up here, and just that should do it. There's a good line. There's nothing more to me intriguing than a good line study. Once you get a good line study, again, that begins to help you put together what the overall content when you go to full illustration is going to look like. So there's a first pass at it there. There's one. Let's go back. Let's finish that one up. Let's start another one here. Another approach, again, I'm going to keep it in mind here today, doing a much more traditional approach to a one-box system, and really less fastback and a lot more of the full body full upper above the belt line, so to work with here. So let's kind of break this one in. Again, same thing again. It's wheels down. And let's count them back. 1, 2, 3, and there's my fourth right there. Rear wheel sits right there. Let's come back down to ground lightly. Give myself a base to work with. Slowly going to build this eye up. So let's kind of get this back in again. A little deeper. A little deeper. Let's come back in and just pick up some accents here. Slope it. Let's bring it across. Now that I've got the package set up, notice how that helped me really begin to build up. For example, getting that wheelbase set really is helpful. What that helps you do is begin to pick up the rest of the proportions by going into widths and so forth, and then heights, and putting it all together. So it's a much more fluid way to set the proportion up to make sure you're pretty accurate all the way through the process here. It's that fake by. I'm right. There we go. Let's go back and a little bit of ground line in here. Pick up a little bit of that. Get this center line set in place, and then let's pick up these wheel envelopes here. First of all, let's kind of finish this up. A more aggressive, but again, the upper, we're going to stay really true to getting a lot more. Let's bring this upper into place here now. Let's get this upset. And the pillar on the roof rail, and just a little kick shows you what that upper is doing. It's kind of neat how this upper is going uphill, drops back in a little bit, and picks up a little bit of flare on the other side of the machine itself. So there we are. Let's get that cowl to come across here. Let's put the rear view mirror in place. A little bit of a hood detail. did a little bit of a different lamping system here. Let's take it right on through. Much more vertical. See, I'm slowly building up the line weights here to kind of bring it all together, and I think it all starts with getting the proportions set. Once those wheels are put down and you get that 3 count back and that 1 box pattern set up, everything else falls into place very nicely. So let's kind of put this, let's get the wheel envelope in place here. Turn it upside down, move it through just a little bit. Now let's bring this right on through. Let's get this chin surface underneath here. Let's finish this shape off here. A bit of an intake, take it up, run it over, bring it off that chin. Get that to work. Let's bring in the second portion here. There it is there. Down the ground. Little by little, I just built that front end. I'm just coming off of that whole process of getting, the, again, proportions set. Let's come back in through here. Change the daylight opening just a bit. Kick that up just a touch. Let's kind of work it into that. Let's bring the rear end. Let's just bring this tail light graphic into place here. And the bezel right back. Nice little design line in here. Break up the surfaces. Let's get that rear. Let's get this all set up here. Get the end pillar into place and take it over the top of the header. Bring it into the cowl. All right, let's see. What do we have there, guys? Coming together all right? Look how nicely that's coming together here as far as I like where this is going. Yeah, me too. It's a lot slipperier, but it still has that same typical, much more one-box look to it as opposed to being a very quick slope off at the rear end of this thing. Let's just kind of put this together here. Let's put this guy together. Put a little bit of that down. Let's put a line wind in this thing now. Oh, pardon me. sick through this thing. Turn this upside down for a minute here. Get a little bit of line thrust on this hood detail. Underneath. I'm just picking up accent areas here that I really want to begin to develop some thick and thin weights and so forth and get the character of this guy put together. So hopefully, maybe an RS Audi. Yeah, maybe it could be. Not a bad call there, Shadow. Not a bad call at all. Let's just get that far side lamp in place here. We're not going to see a lot of it. Just a nice little simple line like so. Let's come back in and pick up this guy. Now let's get this guy set up here. Hub to the hub. Let's come back in and just break it down just a bit here. Let's sharpen this guy a bit. That's all right. Here we are. A little bit of tint back here. A bit of relief. Same back here. Let's indicate a little bit of depth in it. All of a sudden, it seems coming to life here, gang. I feel the body should always look planted and flat out. Yep, there it is. There it is. So let me stop right there for a moment. What do you think, gang? Come together all right? Interesting little shot at it here. Doc, I can ask you a few questions after this drawing. Yeah, please do. Hey, Brad, good to have you join us here. No problem at all. Body's looking nice. Thank you. It's good to have you back on board again. I know you're pretty busy, but thanks for taking the time to join us here. A little more tint in this thing. A little bit of that. Just nice and simple. Let me put a little more weight in this line here so we can kind of get rid of that overstep. Real strong design line. Take it right back out of the wheel envelope there and run it right back. A little more weight into it. A little bit of an offset into this. And again, just a little bit of tint here, just to kind of take it through. bit of softness inside that guy. And underneath this guy, a little more line thrust here. And lo and behold, I think we've got it. I really don't want to go much further than this. I just want to preserve it more of a nice, simple, clean line drawing, setting up the stage for a little bit of rendering work here. Hopefully to come in tomorrow, just pick one of these patterns and go right at it and just do a nice job of putting some real simple finished texture and detail to it. Let me do this. More spoon inside this guy, a little bit more tint. There it is, kind of a little bit more recess. Same thing with this one. Just enough to give it a little bit more edge. And what do you think, guys? There it is, phase 2. Anybody, any comments at all? Hi, Brad. Yeah, the line weight is great in this one. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Just really interesting how thicks and thins all come together. Sends out a signal. Sometimes you just leave the wheels alone. Don't need to go much further than that, but get a lot of the detail work and put in place. It just kind of change the character quite a bit here as it goes from right to left. Hi, Brad. Yeah, let's see. Yep, it looks awesome. Hey, thanks, Chip. So far, so good. Let's put a little bit of frame in this thing. Where am I here? Geez, I'm almost an hour. I can't believe what time flies when you're having fun. So there it is, a little bit of a radius in here. I'm just going to set this up, put a little bit of footing to it. A little bit of frame of reference. If we want to put a little bit of tint thing, we choose this guy to go to the rendering here tomorrow. We'll see what happens with it. So let's do this. Guilty signature, that's me. There it is, guys. That about does it for today. I just thought I wanted to go back. Let's go back and look at the first one we did here. Phase 1. Very simple approach to it. Taking a much more conventional look here. Once I get it put it away, there we are. There was phase 1, looking at a very much more conventional approach to an SUV together. Just someone glows, not sure how you made that happen. I don't either, Chip. It's just good old-fashioned old age. But this was phase 1 in terms of putting together the process. Looking at a very traditional high upper, much less fastback, much more traditional package, so to speak. Phase 2, for example, phase 1, much more traditional. It's certainly out of the ordinary. I just wanted to take a look at being a little more rigid with it. And then, of course, into the second study, a lot more fluid in terms of being a little more dramatic, but again, still paying up that whole high back on this thing, so it's much more traditional SUV as opposed to being a slope back or a fastback system. So that was phase number 2. And let me just do this for a second here, guys, and let's see if we can get them side by side here. 2 different characters, but yet notice there's a commonality here I think I'm going to really stress, and that's simply this. Notice the use of line in both cases. A good line drawing often will set up, if I can get enough of this on the screen here, I'll cover up a little bit here, I'm not sure. Let's do this, if I can get this guy to work together. How's that? Any better? Not much. Anyway, look how much line can play into keeping things simple, direct, and really extremely efficient. So line weight is extremely important. And again, I'm going to go back and review a comment we made when we started the stream here. And it was simply this, that when you go into this process of developing, especially an SUV package, we described it yesterday as being a one-box system. In other words, everything happens inside that frame of reference. It's one box inside a rectangle. But the most important thing, second point about that conversation yesterday about starting this whole process of doing SUV studies was this. We go back in and set the wheel. Proportion and wheelbase is everything. For example, once you set that first wheel, hit that same circle, the 1, 2, 3 back, and then the fourth wheel will give you a good proportion to set things up in terms of making sure the proportions are correct. Because proportion is everything. Yeah, it'll start from the ground up, but proportion is really critical. So once that wheelbase is set, now that gives you an idea how to go to width. And the width is always 1, 2.5 over. So you've got a formula to work with there. Now it changes from time to time, but I think a good solid formula at all times is get the package right. Number 1, what is it? Is it a 1-box, 2-box, or 3-box system? We'll get into more of that conversation as time moves on here. But I wanted to start today with just to go back and review what we did yesterday with that very simple, refreshing approach to a 1-box SUV. Has in itself all the elements inside that trap, inside that rectangle. Number 2, a good proportion for wheelbase is set it up as set the wheel, go 3 back, and your fourth wheel is where the proportions are. And that works whether it's an SUV, a coupe, or a sedan. Then from there, you build the success. The height will fall into place, the proportions, and of course, there's a lot of method to it. I'm not trying to minimize what we're talking about here, but there's an awful lot going in the thought process of once the proportions are set, the wheelbase is down, now all of a sudden you're working off the center lines, you're working with very complicated shapes, can really kind of fool you in a hurry. But if you have a formula to work with in mind and keep it lucid, it's much more manageable. So let me stop right there, and anybody have any questions or any commentary about what we've done here today? Hopefully this has been helpful. It's been a lot of fun for me, I think, excuse me, changing pace a little bit and going much more traditional in the first sketch and a lot more radical in the second sketch. All right, Brad. Yeah, me. Go ahead, Brad. What's happening? It's unrelated. That's fine. Go ahead and fire a question away. That's I'm here to help if I can. Let's see. In the meantime, how about you, Chip? This will be pretty happy with the things we're looking at. What's your approach to constructing an object? That approach is really infinite in terms of constructing an object. It depends on what the character of that object is, Brad. I often begin, again, just what we did here with this SUV. There's a lot of it comes to structural base. I always look at, the first thing I look at is what's it made of? What's its constitution? Is it cylindrical? Is it conical? Is it spherical? Is it rectangular? Is it cubistic? What are these things, what's the real, let's say a water bottle. Well, no question, very simple. That water bottle becomes very easy to work with. Let me grab a sheet of paper here. If you work with a water bottle, the structural side of that is very simple. Let's get this out of the way here. What I suggest at all times, if that water bottle, you're going to set it up, get that axis down, get that vertical in place. Then come back in and pick up, there it is there. Now come right back down and open it up as you go down the vine. Now let's get that pure cylinder in place. There it is. That's the beginning of it. That's the structure. It's a cylindrical form. Now let's say it changes character. Now if it changes character, no problem. If it has a lot more fluid to it, same process. If it changes, get an axis set. Build, lay it in. Change the character. Follow the form. Come back in again. And again, notice how I'm using that structural line there. This is actually one cylinder on top of another cylinder. If I lay it down, same process. There it is there. If it changes character, that's fine. But it's still that same axis. Now I'm following contour right along the whole shape. Now that contour is changing. And again, let's go back to this. Let's say if I add an element to it. Same process. So I take this back and truncate that and get to that. I'm still going to follow that form. Look how that shape, if it changes pace down below and it begins to shrink in a little bit, I'm still going to use that same axis to change its character. Hope that helps answer your question. Does that make sense? I'm going to wait for your response here, guys. Hey, Ballistic, if you're still there, I just want to send my sincerest thanks for having you join us today. It's really been good to have you on board. So you get a cylinder and build around. Yeah, absolutely. You go to a simple form, for example. If it's cylindrical, get the cylinder in place first. That's your basic. That's the structural object we said earlier, Brett. That's really going to work with you here. What we're saying when you asked your initial question was, how do you begin to construct it? I always look at what it's made out of. What's its constitution built on? Is it cylindrical, conical, spherical, and then build off of that. I brought it. Well, how do I know how accurate circles and ellipses? Well, again, you set that pattern by saying, for example, if this is a 2-inch circle here, when you drop it down, for example, and if it stays consistent, you just open that up, and it's still going to be a much more open circle, but it's going to look larger. You have to dictate that visually in your mind. What's the format? Is it going to be conical at the top, or is it tapered? Is it not tapered? That's a difficult question to answer, because I think you have to really begin to develop the fact that it's this tall, and the diameter is 3 inches, 4 inches, 10 feet. Who knows? But that's something you have to dictate. I hope that helps. And also, just for what it's worth, too, I'd be very careful. Sometimes the misconstruction is we think in terms of circles or ellipses, in terms of ellipses, and it's not an ellipse, it's a circle in perspective. That's the most important thing to remember. This guy we deal with right here, this beauty right here, is called a circle in perspective. It's not an ellipse. That's a circle in perspective, and you can prove that by putting it inside a frame. That answers your question too about getting into the structural side of things. Always ask yourself when you start a sketch, whether it's human form, product design, architecture, no matter what the subject matter is. I've learned over the years one of the biggest habits I have is analyze it from the point of view of what is its character. What's it made out of? Is it conical again? Sorry to be redundant, but is it made up of the 5 solids? Which of the 5 solids is it built from? Then I take it from there. For example, any particular vehicle design, for example, it's the same process. You come back in and you sit down, you plant the wheels first. Then you pick up the gesture. Then you repeat the gesture. Then you come back in and pick up the center line. And before you know it, man, look how quickly that came together. It's there. It's already there. Let's go back and finish this up. See that makes sense? How did I get there? Same way. I literally went there and did this. It sat inside inside a one box system, a perspective box. It was here's my leading edge. There's my height. There's my width. And there's the rest of the box. I just built that inside a rectangular form. I just carved that shape out of that rectangle. Does that make sense, Brad, hopefully? And to those of you still on board here, thank you so much for hanging on here. And I'll just say again, thanks so much to Chip 7 for hanging on here. Ballistic, it was great to have you on board. And thanks, Brad. I'm glad that helps. I certainly don't want to be abbreviated here, but I think that really begins to help you put together. It's all structure. What is it made out of? What's its constitution? And take it from there. Ballistic, again, thank you. Brad, thanks for joining forces today. Chip is always good. And Shadow, I'm glad you're doing better. I feel like you'd always draw on an invisible perspective. Yeah, I do. I've said this before when I go through a stream or work that I work with. Every time I draw, I do not draw, for example, this SUV. I draw in my mind. I see the structure. What's it built out of? Then I carve that. I've already got the grid or the perspective programmed upstairs. I'm still learning, like you are, but I always work off of that knowledge of there's a formula here that has to be honored. And I've often said this from the drawing perspective and in any creative pursuit. If we keep the principles, then the principles will keep us. Honor the perspective. Honor all these little things that make a huge difference in our drawing systems. Yes, so I think I've learned over the years to have almost like an automatic reaction to perspective. I see it. I don't understand it all the times, but I see it and I work with it, and I'm thankful that it always seems to work out pretty well. So anybody, any questions at all? Anybody? Feel free, fire away, gang. And once again, if not, I just want to take a moment to thank you very much for all of you joining here today. It was a lot of fun to kind of put this little process together. Thank you for the questions, Rod. Hope that helped. Chip's always going to have you on board. Ballistic, great to see you. And Shadow, I'm glad you're feeling better. I think I picked up earlier you're not feeling well. Nonetheless, thanks for joining here today. And I will say this, and completing the program, please always remember this. If I say something right, let me know. If I say something wrong, please let me know. Drop me a note on my email at jim@drcontrast.com. Go to my website, drcontrast.com, where you get some lesson drawing programs you might want to pick up on. That would be very helpful. And I really appreciate all of you taking the time to be with me today. Tomorrow, tune in around 2:30 or so. We're going to pick one of these designs and go into maybe a little color study and call it a day on SUV and wrapping that up. And some exciting things to come into next week. So I'll wait here for a little conversation to come about once we know what the battle plan is going to be. And then last but not least, I always end my stream by utilizing this. It's so true, because I'm grateful for the fact you've joined us here today. And it's simply this: never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. Thanks very much, gang. Have a great day. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 2:30. Thank you. Bye-bye now. Hey, Die Hard, thanks very much. Good to have you on board here. Thank you. Good to see you. Thanks again, gang. All the best.